What if SKUNTANK was in Gen 1 OU? Now you probably look at this moveset and think to yourself, dang, that is weird. And it most certainly is. But you know what? Its weird moveset, but with a very good typing, really helps it even out. It has a pretty good stat distribution, and as usual, dark types in Gen 1, that's pretty valuable. Gives it a niche that only SKUNTANK can do. And luckily, it has more than just these 4 moves that, are pretty good. You also have things like Substitute and Rest. And obviously, Hyper Beam is pretty good. Substitute in particular is nice because you have 103 HP. So what that means is that for moves like Seismic Toss and Nightshade, you need 2. You need to attack twice in order to break the sub, which is incredibly good. And to be honest, I didn't even realize that when I was making these replays. I didn't keep it for the final cut, but just know I was making a replay with Gengar using Nightshade, and I wasn't paying super close attention. I was doing something else in the background. But then I noticed that the Gengar already used 4 Nightshades, and the SKUNTANK was still standing. And that's when I realized, oh wait, this thing's actually way bulkier than I would have expected. And even though these stats are very weird, the rest aren't bad either. Now, 61 special defense is not the best. I'd say that's a little below average typically, but in this case, you are immune to Psychic. So, the most prominent special attackers will not be hitting you with your stab, which means the only real things you're looking out for is Stab Thunderbolts most likely. And technically Stab Blizzard from Jinx and Cloyster. So overall, it's manageable. Defense is where it's probably a little bit worse, which is ironic because you technically have a higher stat, but you're weak against Earthquake. But on the bright side, Fire Blast has a 30% chance to burn, so that could help you mitigate that weakness. And obviously, 113 HP, really good, and also helps kind of make up for your stats in other places. 93 attack is pretty good for the time. 84 speed is great. It doesn't really... I mean, I guess you outspeed Cloyster, but you don't care that much since you lose to Cloyster either way. But you're fast enough to have guaranteed crits with Slash, which is the main thing you want. Although, personally, I'd probably, if I could, would probably take, like, 20 of its stats away, making it 64 base speed, and then I'd put 10 into each of the defensive stats. That's what I would personally do. If you did that, this thing would be, like, just a full-on Metis. But, you can, but it doesn't matter. With Slash, you're doing pretty good damage on basically everything. And Fire Blast, you're using it on your special attack, which is 71, which is 1 more special than Tauros. So ironically, it's like an actual usable stat. It's not even like you're using it just because you just need a coverage move. Fire Blast is a decent alternative if you're facing something that doesn't care too much about Slash. But if you're facing something that doesn't care about either of them, there's always Explosion. And Explosion is always really good, especially when you have a good attack stat and a great crit rate. And of course, just walling psychic attacks, that's just great. Special attackers in general are kind of scared of you, since with Slash, you can mostly plow through their physical defenses. And for the bulky special attackers, like Executor can't really hurt you. Meanwhile, you have super effective Fire Blast. Starmie has, Thunder Wave and Recover. But the only stab it can hit you with is Surf, which is the least common out of all of the coverage moves. And obviously Explosion is always just a big threat. Funny enough, Fire Blast, like, burning things is usually pretty bad. Like burning a Chansey or Starmie, you don't really want that. But SKUNTANK's probably the one Pokemon that can make it work. Because Slash is always just consistent damage. But way more importantly, that burn chip just makes explosion damage ranges just more consistent. So that's something to keep note of. The last move I'll talk about is Haze. Now, I've gone over a few Pokemon with the move Haze, such as Crobat, and I'm eventually going to do Frostlass. But I think SKUNTANK is probably the Pokemon that'll use it the most out of all the ones I've covered so far, and probably will cover. And I think that's mostly because of its bulkiness. For something like Frostlass, it's like, you want to use it mostly as either a lead or as a late game cleaner. I don't think you ever want to set it up against something with a lot of stats. Although I guess in Frostlass's case, it could probably outspeed. The same could be said for Crobat, but Crobat also just mostly has nothing to offer in games in Gen 1, and also just has a pretty exploitable typing. Not so much the case here. And for things that you would want to use Haze against, like for example, Slowbro, it's a big deal because Haze can reset the speed reduction on speed. So ironically, you're actually a pretty good answer to Slowbro. Granted, you'll have to explode, assuming you don't have rest. But overall, a very unique Pokemon. I think that's the best way I can describe SKUNTANK. Unique. But that's about it for the pre-analysis. Let's get on to the replays, shall we? Starting off with the boy himself, we got Tauros. Thankfully, you can survive 2 earthquakes without a crit. Although, definitely like has to be in some sort of damage range. But the important thing is that it can put you, or give you a chance to, go for Fire Blast to get the burn. But even if you don't, you can always just, go for Explosion preemptively. Which is also just a pretty good idea, because it's a Tauros. A pretty big deal in Gen 1, if you haven't heard. And you could do the same thing for Snorlax. I think Snorlax is probably a better... You probably do better against Snorlax than you do against Tauros. Obviously, outspeeding, just pretty good. For, more consistently getting those burns off and making it more impactful. But also against Amnesialax, if you use Haze, you can get rid of their buffs altogether. Granted, Slash is, not even, breaking subs sometimes, not with 24%. But still, you're honestly pretty annoying towards Snorlax. It doesn't even matter what set you're using, because also with Reflect Wax, you have Slash. You just hit through the Slash. Now, next up is Chansey, and Slash is obviously pretty good here. Not a 2-hit KO, unfortunately. But I don't think it matters too much, because Explosion is already enough to equalize this. And Chansey definitely does not want to risk being hit with an Explosion. That's just... You're gonna die. I don't think that's gonna surprise you. Granted, I'll talk more about this when we get to Gengar, but Gengar itself and Rhydon are definitely your biggest ops. So Explosion can, I'd say, sometimes be predicted, but not the worst thing in the world. And not like Explosion is the only reason to use SKUNTANK either. Granted, I would have hoped that Slash would have done a little bit more, but that's fine, because, again, here's just an example of where the burn chip can unironically just make your make your damage ranges more consistent. I wouldn't, recommend doing that, by the way. If able to, just paralyze everything first, because SKUNTANK does way better against paralyzed opponents. Although, for Cloyster, it probably doesn't matter. I think Cloyster's just way too tanky. And you don't have Stab on Fire Blast, so it's not even, super great to use on Cloyster. So most likely, you're being forced to explode. And if they're being careful with their rest, or just their clamps, you might not even kill the Cloyster. Now, Exeggutor. Now, normally I don't bother using status moves in these, because I don't think you learn too much just to see a Pokemon, not move for 10 turns. But this is, one of those times where I made an exception, and the reason should be very obvious. Just to show how utterly useless Exeggutor is, when you can't use Psychic. This Skuntank, funny enough, is even a poison type, so it resists Mega Drain, and it's tanky enough to where it doesn't take too much from Double Edge. So there's truly nothing you can really do against Skuntank if you're Executor. So yeah, like, easily the easiest Executor switch in the game. Now here's the Gengar I was talking about. And yeah, it's pretty rough. Because you only have Fire Blast to hit it. And even then, it took a crit just to be a 3-hit KO. Without it, it's only 20. Now, if you're the Gengar player, definitely don't bother with Nightshade. Definitely go for... like, Thunderbolt. And you see here, this is the replay where I wasn't paying attention, and I realized, oh wait, the Gengar, like, it didn't kill yet. And for this one, like, this is actually the first replay where I actually put Substitute on this thing. To be honest, I probably would have done that for the Chansey replay if I realized that. But I don't think it makes too much of a difference with the Chansey replay, because I think even with Substitute, you're probably exploding anyways. Although I guess Substitute Rest could be interesting. In general, I think Skuntank has, like, a pretty surprisingly, like, wide variety of moves it can use. And it helps you solve different problems. So that's a very quirky Pokemon. But, you know, like, I kind of like that, you know? Now, next up, I believe this is going to be Jolteon. And I really don't have much to say here. Like, I guess since Jolteon doesn't take that much from Slash, like, it's only a 3-hit KO, you're not doing much against it. So you're just exploding. And I guess because of Explosion, this would be like a could go either way. It feels a little weird to put Jolteon in bad matchups when it's, you know, not exactly the tankiest on the physical side. Now for Jinx, I thought this would have been just a pretty great matchup. But no, unlike other Psychic types, Jinx can defend itself, and Blizzard hits pretty hard. So this can honestly go either way, depending on freeze and crits. Alright, moving on again, and this time it's Rhydon. And yeah, you're not cooking against Rhydon. Even if you get the burn, you're just not really hurting it too much. Granted, the Rhydon's basically useless if you burn it, but is it really worth it? Probably isn't. And as you saw there, it tanked the explosion very, very easily. Now, Slowbro. This is the one that made me realize Haze has more utility than I thought. Because normally when I see a Pokemon with the move Haze, I think to myself, what's even the point? Because I just feel like there's just not too many boosters in Gen 1, minus Slowbro exactly. And even then, usually you're better off just going straight for like a Thunderbolt on a Jolteon or Zapdos. But as you see in this replay, Skuntank reset the speed, so it was outspeeding Slowbro, and even though it wasn't doing a lot of damage, it was able to go for Explosion before Slowbro can go for more Amnesias or Rest. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And even though it's exploding, I'd say this is definitely a good matchup for Skuntank, since it's mostly in its control the entire time, if you know what I mean. Now here we have Starmie. And in many ways, this is basically identical to Slowbro. Although for this replay, I've replaced Haze and Substitute with Rest. And with Rest, it can, you know, do pretty well against Blitzbolt Starmie. Obviously, crits are pretty scary, but Explosion is probably even scarier. So really, there's not really any right answer what Skuntank's moveset should be. Hyper Beam, I say, could also be pretty helpful. I didn't bother for these replays because I think Slash is just better. It just, or not better necessarily. I guess just more consistent, you know? It doesn't matter too much anyways, because you're definitely would rather kill things with Explosion at the end of the day. I do wonder what teams you'd actually use Skuntank on. Let me know in the comments below while we watch Victory Belt try to do something and fail. Because what you expect it to do against a bulky poison type? Granted, I don't think I give Victory Bell enough credit, because often in these videos, I don't give it Sweet Powder, and I don't Wrap Walk, so obviously Victory Bell doesn't do that great for these videos, because I'm just kind of just using pretty bad versions of them. But I'm pretty sure whenever a Pokemon does lose badly with the Victory Bell, I make it known, so never mind then, I guess. We got Zapdos, and I didn't bother with Thunder Wave. I think it probably just makes more sense to go straight for damage. And yeah, it's just both hit each other very hard, and with Skuntank going boom unless Zapdos crits. So that's about it for that. Normally, this is where it would be the end, but since this is a Patreon video, we're going to look at 3 more replays. Now, I wasn't exactly sure what to do for Skuntank, since it's a very weird Pokemon, and kind of hard to find Pokemon that have other niches for. But I think I found 2, along with one other. You'll see what I mean. But first off, here is Persian. Because I figured, oh, I guess they might have competition for Slash. And in terms of Slash users, these 2 are probably the best. Instead of, like, maybe, I don't know, Sandslash, but even then. In terms of this one, though, Fire Blast isn't very useful since Persian will ignore the attack debuff. So, outside of that, Slash isn't doing much, so Persian just kind of wins pretty easily. And next off, and this one I think is pretty neat, and it's Aerodactyl. This is a niche Pokemon already, but I think Aerodactyl would probably be a little bit better when Skuntank is around, because it would wall Skuntank pretty perfectly. It doesn't care too much about Fire Blast, because if it is using a physical move, it's probably something like fodder, like Wing Attack, that's mostly just there to stall power points. So Aerodactyl can completely wall out Skuntank. Now this last one... oh boy. Oh, what's going on? Oh, it must be something in the air. I think it's muck. Oh man, it's so polluted. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, how do you use muck? Like, I just genuinely could not think of anything else to put against Skuntank that made sense. So my only thought was bulky poison type that has explosion? So, like, I don't know what to say. I have never looked at Muck before in Gen 1. Like, the only one I've kind of looked at was Alolan Muck. But, like, that makes sense. Because just like Skuntank here, it actually has a good typing in Poison Dark. It's like, I don't know what to say. Now, I just realized right now I forgot to put Persian and, what's it called, Aerodactyl on here. But, like, it doesn't matter. Persian would definitely be in bad matchups, and Aerodactyl would be an unwinnable. Overall, though, here's the tier list, and yeah, I think Skuntank did better than I thought it would. I'm not exactly sure what I was thinking, but yeah, he's just a sneaky little guy. And I don't know, I think he would stay in OU. What do you think? Do you think Skuntank has what it takes to stay in OU? Or does it seem more like a borderline or underused Pokemon? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.